Northern Journey. Now this is a one-of-a-kind game, an easy-to-miss gem. I remember the first time I saw this game, I almost passed it up, but something about it kept drawing me in until I eventually caved and bought it. That was back in 2022, and the game still hasn't left my head since finishing that first playthrough. I've been meaning to cover it on the channel for a while, and I suppose now's as good a time as any. As far as preamble goes, I don't really have a lot to say here because this is the kind of game that's best experienced by, well, experiencing it. So let's get started and do just that. Somewhere in a remote northern region. I'm lost, I'm alone, someone just destroyed my boat from the mainland. I can't swim apparently, and I'm not sure swimming would help much anyway since my arms aren't attached to anything. And with that, we're thrown into the game. When red dot, save is disabled. Welcome to Northern Journey. Well, at least this place is inhabited, though I may live to regret saying that. This mysterious fellow is the traveling flute player who graciously welcomes us to the land of Deadwell. I was hoping for a shipwrecked, desperate soul to wander by, then, conveniently, someone sank your boat. So I take it that flute doubles as some kind of blowpipe Gatling gun then? Like Guts' crossbow, right? He gives me the main quest of the game, which is to retrieve 3 items that have been stolen from him. Then he calls me Dim, and that's about all we're getting from this guy. Yet Northern Journey isn't interested in wasting your time. This quest journal barely used it. The game is relatively linear, at least in its quest progression, if not the level design itself, which we'll get to in a minute. For now, we've got to explore the nearby village, and if the tone of this game hasn't been set already, the village idiot and his pet worm will do the trick. He found it inside a door, far away, whatever that means, and he's probably not even the strangest thing in this village. There's a figure in a cave under this giant rock who looks eerily similar to the priest in the church. The sheriff has arrested something. These 2 ladies are collecting cauldrons, brooms, and Black Phillips. Hope that won't be a problem later. And the only doctor this side of the mountain is prescribing me liquid shame. Not the friendliest place. The penalty for tax evasion seems a bit steep here as well. Probably best to move on. I'm making my way across these concerningly rickety-looking bridges, and I grab an emergency health vial along the way. You keep a limited amount of these in your inventory, and they give you 15 health a pop. Right now you max out at 4. They'll be important later. But for now we're heading to the inventor's house to pick up the first weapon, and arguably one of the best in the game.
You are crying for a weapon? And this you dare ask me after you jump into my house?
You know, this house already seems physically improbable as it is, so just give me my sling and I'll be out of your hair. Does he have hair? Kind of hard to tell from this angle. Alright, great. So now we get to learn how the weapons work in this game. You may expect something familiar, seeing as most games with projectile-based weaponry like this tend to be pretty straightforward. Firing out a rock or an arrow in a straight line, maybe dropping off in an arc. But like many things in Northern Journey, the weaponry works just a little bit differently from what you're used to. Readying the sling loads up a rock and starts your character charging up a shot. Each full rotation of the sling increases the damage, capping out at 100 with 3 swings or more. But you can't just keep an attack charged forever. Once this bar at the bottom runs out, you'll be forced to reset your shot. I think this is a good choice for the balance of the game, since it requires the player to plan in advance, rather than just letting you walk into every encounter with a fully charged sling attack. It makes sense, too. I mean, I wouldn't want to be walking around helicoptering a rock above my head for hours at a time. But that's not the only complication here. You see this white line in the center of the screen? That's your crosshair, and if it looks unusual, there's a reason for that. See, the rock doesn't just travel in a straight line. It comes out at an angle and flies somewhat diagonally, as shown by the fade on the crosshair. Target nearer, target further away. If all this sounds a bit complicated, that's because it is, in theory. But once you actually start using the system, it doesn't take long to internalize the mechanics. It works more or less how you would expect a sling to. The physics of it make sense. I can only assume that this level of attention to detail stems from the developer actually knowing how to use a sling. All this gives the combat in the game a unique identity all its own, and this is just the first weapon of many. You're going to want to get comfortable with these systems before the first enemy encounter because the game isn't planning on pulling its punches, so neither should you. Oh yeah, and speaking of the enemies, there's something I should probably address real quick. You know that thing a lot of games have been doing recently where they add an arachnophobia mode or some kind of warning at the beginning? And everyone just kind of rolls their eyes because in most of these games the spiders aren't that bad at all, and the warning was pretty unnecessary. Well, this game doesn't have one of those, but it is one of the few games I've played that actually deserves one. There are a lot of spiders in Northern Journey, and they are extraordinarily unpleasant to look at. So consider this your first and final warning because it's only going to get uglier from here on out. On that note, here's the first combat encounter of the game. Oh, no, 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 no. Yup, hate that. Hate that. These things are lightning fast and they blend in with the environment uncomfortably well. We'll talk about the texture work later because there's actually quite a bit to discuss there, but as you can see, this is a very visually busy game. There's a lot to look at on the screen at all times, so some enemies become harder to see as a result. This isn't a mistake. In fact, we'll see going forward just how deliberate that design choice actually is. On the topic of visuals though, you'll have to forgive me if the bitrate of this video gets a little choppy at times. I'll do what I can, but the nature of compression might muddle things up slightly. Anyway, we're heading to the lighthouse now to get a key, but on the way we can kick down a ladder for a shortcut and meet the best NPC in the game, the time waster Seer, who presumably just hangs out in this shack all day snorting purple fire fumes and predicting all the ways you'll eventually die later on in the game. Funny thing that I didn't realize until this playthrough, the predictions actually foreshadow certain areas and encounters we'll see later. Cool touch. Grab the key, take another shortcut, and after a quick check-in with the local crackhead and being attacked by the ground, it's off to the first proper area of the game. Here we are in the Forest Path, a mostly linear affair to get us acquainted with the pace of the game and introduce the Absorber. This will collect the souls of slain enemies, which is necessary for progression. Every once in a while, you'll run across these barriers that require a certain amount of souls to open. This functions as a way to keep the player from just sprinting past every combat encounter. But as long as you fight all the enemies you come across, you'll always have more than enough to continue at any given time. No grinding required. Monsters don't respawn anyway, so that's not a concern. This area also boasts some fantastic atmosphere, as did the last, and pretty much the entire game for that matter, but you really start to feel it here. This dark, quiet forest, thick with fog and accompanied by a low, droning ambient track. Contrasting the whimsical feeling of the tutorial zone, there's a palpable sense of danger in the air. A strange creature flits from tree to tree just out of your reach, always watching. And naturally, there are more spiders. Great! These ones spit acid as well, and they're joined by several other monstrosities like these rotworms and more spiders and flying spiders. We're rapidly approaching the point of too many spiders and we're only in the second level. My favorite part of the forest path has to be this pond here, guarded by some kind of octopus that you never really get a good look at. You can't kill it. Not permanently, anyway. You can only stun it for a few seconds to cross the bridge and get to the loot it's guarding. And by loot, I of course mean a demonic statue with a dead sheep impaled on one of its horns. Not exactly a conventional reward, but it'll have to do. Now I just need to figure out how to fit this thing in my pouch. Well, maybe this will help. In every level of the game, you can find one of these yellow potions that increase your carry capacity for ammo and 1/5 emergency health? I think that means you can carry one more emergency health vial with every 5 of these potions found. I never checked, to be honest. There are also red potions to increase your maximum health by 1 point each. 1 point may not sound like much, but they add up over time, so it's definitely worth the extra effort of looking for them. And you really do have to look for them. Some of these things are deviously well hidden. Before moving on to the next level, the flute player sends us some more information via his messenger wolf. The 3 artifacts he was talking about earlier were dimensional violators, stolen by the village idiot. They rip tunnels towards any realm you focus on, and I may not be 100% certain what that means, but it probably isn't a good idea to leave those laying around in any case, so I guess I'm on board for this quest. Not that I had much of a choice. Emerging from the cover of the forest, we find ourselves in the rain-soaked fields of Ravenfen. Damn, that's a cool name. The flute player is waiting for us again and gives us a simple objective of finding 3 burial sites and a shield for a puzzle later on, as well as clearing a boulder from our path forward. And with that, we're sent off into the level. If you thought this whole game would be relatively linear pathways with occasional shortcuts, Ravenfen is going to be quite a surprise. This is a completely open-ended map, and it's where the exploratory aspect of this game starts to come clearer into focus. For my money, this is where Northern Journey is at its best, putting you into a big, sprawling, non-linear level, handing you a few vague tasks to achieve within said level, and letting the player explore at their own pace. It feels adventurous. I feel like I'm really discovering things, even though they were put here for the express purpose of letting me discover them. And the notable use of landmarks and distinct visual clarity go a long way in making sure that you rarely feel lost or confused as to where you need to be. You'd better hope you've got the sling figured out by now, because this place is crawling with enemies, to the tune of enormously oversized mosquitoes and sheep covered with ticks, gone mad from pain rushing at you in melee. Me though, I'm headed for the first burial mound to pick up the second weapon in the game, the bow from the east, which I accidentally put into the wrong weapon slot, only to find out that you can't actually change which slots your weapons are in until you have enough to fill all 4 of them. After recovering from the utterly devastating news that I would have to press the 3 button on my keyboard to bring out my bow, rather than my preferred use of the 2 button, I dried my tears and moved on. A changed man, but a stronger one for the hardship. The bow should be a bit more familiar than the sling. It works how you expect it to. Notch an arrow and fire it in the direction of an enemy. You don't even have to charge a shot. Unlike the sling though, you don't get unlimited ammo with this. Rocks and stones are always in plentiful supply, but you have to go out of your way to find arrows. They're relatively common, but at this point I'm still going to be saving them for tougher encounters. Something impressive about Ravenfen is that despite it being a rather dismal setting, the atmosphere is just as compelling as ever. Many games struggle to make even the most interesting locations truly immersive, but Northern Journey tosses out this depressing bog with a dark, muted color palette and still manages a vibe that makes you want to be in that area. I think the surrounding hills contribute something to that. In-game, they work as a simple barrier to the edges of the level, but they add a sense of scale to the place as well, making Ravenfen feel bigger than it really is. The choice to go with that instead of a more traditional tree line or the dreaded invisible wall is something that I find admirable. At no point during the more open sections of the game do you feel enclosed or stifled, and that makes a big difference. We'll see more of that soon. For now, I'm getting jumped by skeletons enough to scare me into chugging down my first emergency health flask, all to get a key to open a tower, to get a shield that I can't even use as a shield, unfortunately. Wouldn't mind one, to be honest. And before heading out, we can talk to these stranded musicians who ask us for a gig. So, what do you guys play, Norwegian black metal or something? I don't have any money on me, but I could point you in the direction of a demonic ritual statue, so maybe we can work something out. Pulling this lever dislodges a rock somehow, which lets us progress to the next area. And oh boy, what an area it is. Feast your eyes. The best of Northern Journey comes earlier in its runtime than you may expect, but we'll be back here several more times throughout the game. You can view Greenslet as a hub of sorts. It connects to multiple other levels and is full of shortcuts and interconnecting pathways. But for now, it's already an explorer's paradise. And it's also where the music of this game starts to really hit. If you want to put this in the category of dungeon synth, then it's definitely some of the best stuff I've heard in the genre. Each track enhances its accompanying area by a lot and fits the vibe of the game perfectly. You could even say it practically makes the vibe of the game. It's dark, sometimes flat out ominous, but the swelling synth pads radiate a sense of beauty and adventure through it all, and the track from Greenslet is the perfect example of that. This shit is downright transcendental, yo. As for our objectives in this area, we're here to find some more shields, and that's all we know at this point, but there's plenty to do in addition to that. First and foremost, the Invertebrate's crossbow. Yes, that is indeed a mag-fed bolt-action crossbow. Just go with it. This doesn't do a great deal of damage, but the fire rate is higher than either the sling or the bow, so it's useful for crowd control and picking off weaker foes. Each weapon has its place in the roster, and none of them feel pointless or recycled, which is nice. I keep using each of these all the way into the endgame, and there are plenty more to come. We can actually go back to the first zone of the game, Deadwell, from here, and kick down another shortcut ladder in a sort of looping around back to Firelink Shrine type of moment. Though admittedly in this case I can't exactly wrap my head around how these two places connect to one another, but whatever, it's cool. It may not look like it, but you can just barely walk across this rope. You can just barely walk across this rope here and get to the entrance of the troll hole. The troll hole. There are a great many things that could be in the troll hole, and I don't especially want to encounter any of them. Luckily, I need a headlamp to go in there, so instead, I get to contend with some more massive, nondescript flying insects and a few giant ants for good measure. A lot of giant ants. Okay, that's a lot of giant ants. And a bear. Not a giant one, though, just a regular bear, which, granted, is definitely intimidating enough as is. And also these glowing cave rock centipedes. Wow, this is some impressive enemy variety. Making our way across what could charitably be called a bridge, we get a crank for an elevator in Deadwell, so that shortcut earlier wasn't just for show. I'm gonna go ahead and make my way back there and... Wait, what's that? Down the ravine, crank, crank, Witchy will not be very happy. Yep, that's going straight into my growing collection of suppressed memories. Anyway, let's head down into the ravine for our first boss fight of the game. Yes, Northern Journey has proper boss fights, and boy are they janky. This one isn't particularly difficult, but this chain lightning burns through your health bar real quick, and don't even ask me what this thing is supposed to be. Well, whatever. I take care of it pretty easily and net myself a key as a reward, which leads through the witch's house and onto this bridge here. Come to me, I will show you where to go. Right. So, this path leads to our next shield, and also a painful lesson that this game does indeed have fall damage. Followed by yet another boss fight, this time with a witch snake flying around on a broom doing backflips. I don't know, man. She doesn't die when you beat her either, just pieces out into the forest with an ominous threat. We will wait for you in Sourwood? Dude, this game has the coolest location names. Anyway, back to Greenslit for more shield hunting. You'll notice these rope lines stretching across the cliffs into the distance. I can't use these quite yet, but once I get a pulley, this place is going to get even more expansive. I suppose you could also try to climb across by hand, but yeah, I guess I understand why the game doesn't let you do that. I wouldn't want to, though it's not like I would want to go across them with a pulley either, or at all. The next shield, though, is collected without incident. Unless you want to count this rampaging moose in a tower filled with wraiths, and also an encounter in this river that I really just don't want to talk about right now as incidents. Actually, come to think of it, this one was kind of a pain in the ass. But luckily, during all that, I managed to cobble together a working headlamp from the remains of some willing donors. Which means the troll hole is available to explore at last. I'm not looking forward to this. Nothing for it. Down we go. It seems someone else was here before us and left some notes on these rocks, or bits of tree bark. I'm not sure which. The text is separate from the model of... Yeah, that's weird. Whatever. Our mysterious benefactor warns of a troll summoner up ahead, but luckily, I've played Diablo 2, so I know all there is to know about dealing with these guys. Goblins and small trolls are basically the same thing, right? Okay, I take it back. He's burrowing into the rocks and spawning exploding mushrooms in my face. Diablo 2 didn't prepare me for this. Nor did the note, for that matter. It said this guy would be summoning troll spawn. Are these mushrooms just an early stage of troll? There's some kind of egg? Do the trolls have to eat their way out of the mushrooms when they... I might be overthinking this. Even in this cave, the atmosphere still shines. Crossing this pond while bats flit around in the darkness and the water drips from the stalactites. The soundscape is so immersive. And continuing the trend of having something new to experience every other minute, now we've got these rock golems who can only be killed with the sling. And then immediately after that, this giant kraken monster under the water who can't be killed at all, only distracted by these flesh balls that our friend left us. And before that gimmick has a chance to grow stale, here's an army of horrible cave spiders. It's just memorable set piece after memorable set piece. The game will not let up. Okay, maybe there are a few too many spiders, but still. Unfortunately, the next note we come across is accompanied by the bones of its writer. At least he found a nice, conveniently placed coffin to spend his final hours in. No time to mourn now, though. The Guardian, that meaning the Watcher in the water thing from earlier, has followed us down here, and our friend left us one last gift to fend it off. The rotating crossbow. Look at this absolute contraption of a weapon. Predictably, it deals low damage and isn't very accurate, but that fire rate will come in handy more than a few times throughout the rest of the game. For now, it'll do the job of fending off this monster as we make our way to the boss of this area. I was bitten many times by cave spiders. I know how you feel, buddy. I do not have the strength to fight a large troll waiting down this hole. I better go back to that side cave and heal up, me and my trusty rotating crossbow. Well, this thing isn't going to be much use for the upcoming fight, but luckily I've been hoarding some other new weapons for this exact purpose. Throwing axes and throwing swords. Sure. They do a lot of damage, but are a bit awkward to aim at smaller enemies, so they're best used in boss fights. That note failed to mention, however, that this big guy isn't alone down here. He's got backup in the form of more troll summoners. Oh, so that's what troll spawn is. I actually kill the giant troll on my first try, but then immediately walk backwards into about a dozen of those exploding mushrooms and die instantly. He went down first though, so that means I win. Something cool about this guy that I was too distracted to notice until rewatching this footage, his weapon is actually an entire moose head on a hook and chain being used as a flail. What a suitably unhinged choice of weapon. Alright, there we go. Not getting fooled by the mushroom patch this time. Apparently, these trolls have a minecart track set up. Just a straight line that leads right down into an underground lake. It's kind of hilarious that we see this minecart enemy like twice here, for about 5 seconds total, and then never again. I gotta respect the completely unnecessary effort. So that whole mess was all for this one last shield, but now that I have it, I can confront this troop of undead knights, the former bearers of the shields. Very neat concept for a fight, very annoying execution. They'll block all but the most precise of shots while sprinting right up into your face over and over in a group. It feels like they can catch up to you no matter how fast you're moving. At least they don't have much health. Just 2 arrows is enough to bring one of them down, but whatever. I beat them and earn their respect or something, and mercifully they grant me passage to the next zone. Did someone say swamp level? I sure didn't, but here we are anyway. Don't worry, it's not as bad as you'd think. Mostly. We've got a few things to do here. Find a witch statue, get our hands on the pulley so we can explore the rest of Greenslet, and we're also looking for a bear crossbow. What's a bear crossbow, you ask? A beast, I respond. That's all you need to know for now. We'll see it in action soon, but it's going to take some pain to get there. And today, pain takes the shape of a swarm of dragonflies. Oh man, these dragonflies. I swear their hitboxes are smaller than usual, and the way they move is just... The trick is to wait until they charge you head on, because then they'll be moving in a straight line, but even then, dude. Whatever, they're not even the biggest problem in this place. That title would go to the Knockin', a strange beast in the water who lures passers-by into drowning with its hypnotic, otherworldly song. Not unlike a siren, but also not an invention of this game, actually. The Knockin', also known as the Nixie, or a variety of other names, is a creature from Scandinavian folklore, a water spirit of sorts. Although there are many different varieties, sometimes depicted as a horse or just some guy playing music, this particular fellow seems to have been heavily inspired by these 2 old drawings. In this case, the draw of the Knockin' song is manifested in-game by literally pulling the player toward the water whenever it's around. The closer you get, the stronger the pull becomes, until eventually it's impossible to break free. So you have to tread carefully and quickly, at least around this center pond. No use trying to fight it either, it takes no damage. Some of you may have noticed something about the enemies in this game by now. I mentioned it briefly a while ago, but there are a lot of them. Like, a lot. And if you've been paying attention, you've realized by now that all the areas in the game so far have an entirely unique set of enemies. Even the spiders. There have been several different varieties, but no one area has repeated a common enemy type one single time. And this, shockingly, is the case for the rest of the game. According to the Steam page, there are over 50 enemy types in here. That is extremely impressive for a one-man show. Heck, that would be impressive even for a full-size dev team. And most of these creatures are pretty distinct from one another as well. I can't even imagine how long it took to make an entire set of textures, models, animations, program the AI and make sure everything works correctly for over 50 different enemies, all by yourself. Not to mention the task of even coming up with that many different ideas in the first place. Talk about a passion project. And it makes a real difference, too. Not only does it contribute to each level feeling distinct and memorable, but it ensures the player is constantly on their toes, never able to settle into familiarity enough to just breeze through all the encounters without even thinking. And also, it's just neat to have this many cool things to fight. I think enemy variety is one of the most overlooked aspects of game design. Obviously, not every game needs 50 or more unique bad guys, and sometimes a more limited roster can do the trick just fine. It depends on the type of game, of course. But I think we've all been in that position before, 15, 20 hours into a game and still fighting the same tired designs from the tutorial, none of whom require any different strategies or tactics, while your brain slowly leaks out of your ear and your eyes drift in opposite directions. And I'm just saying, for this kind of game, it's nice to avoid that. Anyway, here's a little test for you. Spot the threat in this picture. I'll give you a second to find it. It's right here. A huge coiled snake just sitting there blending in. Oh, and here. Another snake. And here. And up here. Actually, there are two up here. And the entrance to this place gets blocked off by falling debris. Have fun! Oh, did I not mention those other snakes off to the side there? They always get a good chuckle out of this crazy flop they do as a death animation, though. Boing! The nest of serpents was guarding the pulley, so we can check that off our list now. And finally, the world is open to us once more. I'll head back to Greenslit in a while, but I have a couple other things to do here first. Someone's been living in this place, apparently, and they've met a most predictable fate down in this cave. I don't really know what he was expecting building his house here, but I guess he was prepared for trouble to come knocking, because he built this trapdoor exit hidden under the bed. That's all that's in here, by the way. Just a log shanty with a bed and 3 exits. 5-star accommodations these are not, but I could be convinced to spend the night if they've got a good continental breakfast. Here we get a bit of exposition about the dimensional violators we've been hunting for. They were created by an unnamed sorcerer and made to tear holes into other worlds, gateways or portals of sorts. Somehow, the village idiot found the castle where they were hidden and made off with all 3, only to just lose them. Now one of the violators has fallen into the clutches of the witches from Sourwood, so that's our next destination. First though, we can take this pulley line all the way to the other side of Knockpond, admire this trebuchet that's just here for some reason, narrowly avoid being mauled to death, and find one half of the bear As I was saying, find one half of the bear crossbow. What's that? You want more spiders? And the previous spiders weren't creepy enough for you? Well, you're in luck, person that probably doesn't exist. Knockpond has you covered with by far the worst spider variety yet. They're small, they're twitchy, they're fast, they're hard to see, they blend in with the purposefully excessive amount of grass and shrubbery over here, and best of all, they stop dead in their tracks when you look at them, which means they're always sneaking up on you from the sides and behind. Would you look at this? I'm looking right at this stupid thing and I can barely see it. That's what I was talking about before with certain enemies blending into the terrain absolutely being a conscious choice. And honestly, I love it. I think it's fun when indie devs go against the grain and make decidedly unconventional design choices, just to mess with the player in ways that you wouldn't see anywhere else. Especially when the player gets some nice methods of fighting back. Speaking of, here's the second part for the bear crossbow, the goat lever. Combining the two, we've got ourselves a devastating weapon that deals out huge amounts of damage with an easy-to-aim, fast-moving projectile. The only downsides being that you can't carry much reserve ammo for it, and the reload takes a while. Still, what hand cannons are to handguns, this thing is to crossbows, if that analogy makes any sense. Oh right, the witch statue. Turns out we need to find some eyes before we can do anything with that. Does it have to be any specific eyes? Because I know a guy. Owns this ramshackle little bed and breakfast. He might be willing to help. Oh, I just need to go back to Greenslit. Well, that works out. I was on my way there anyway. Well, Knockpond, it's been fun. Mosquitoes, ambush spiders, impossible to hit dragonflies, ancient unknowable entities. All the joys of an actual Norwegian swamp. Alright. The return trip through Greenslit is notable for its sort of pseudo-Metroidvania progression now that you have the pulley. Obviously, the game is nothing like an actual Metroidvania. What I mean is that finding this item grants you a new way of traversing places you've already been, unlocking new shortcuts in the path forward. There's this one cool part where you have to shoot a ballista at a target and then slide down the rope attached to the arrow. Unfortunately, it can't all be sunshine and rainbows. The way to the next level is blocked by a fortress guarded by undead bandits, and this fortress is where some problems with Northern Journey's combat system really start to rear their ugly heads. See, despite the rather unique ballistics, the combat in this game is ultimately pretty simple. That isn't so much a problem when you're fighting individual enemies or small groups. Fighting bosses, well, that can, as previously mentioned, be more inconsistent. But approaching this fortress, walls appear to block your progress and dozens of bandits start pouring out of the woodwork. Put simply, the game's systems aren't up to the task of making this type of horde battle fun. The complete lack of any defensive options starts to become an issue when your only recourse is to hold S and circle strafe for minutes at a time. Some enemies even have lunge attacks, so they'll be closing the distance and poking at you over and over. And you'd better hope you don't run into one of those trees, because then they'll all catch up at once. All this while catapults rain flaming stones upon your cranium, and yeah, I think it's safe to say that these sections do not play to Northern Journey's strengths as a game. And while this isn't the first instance of the combat disregarding its own limitations and becoming tedious as a result, it definitely won't be the last. At least it's pretty satisfying to finally break through the defenses and take revenge on these two dickweeds who were raining hell on me the whole time. Anyway, the bandits were guarding the entrance to this cave, so now we can enter and experience one of the cooler moments in the game. One that you may want to look away from if you get motion sickness. Pull on this chain and go for a ride on this swirling waterfall elevator tunnel thing, only to emerge in this small catacomb. We were told earlier to obtain a flask with the strength of 9 men, and so we absorbed the essence of these corpses into a strength potion, before exiting to Fall Crush. Fall Crush is a much appreciated palate cleanser of an area. There are no enemies to speak of, only the side of an enormous mountain to scale. It's nice to have some time to admire the atmosphere, music, and texture work uninterrupted for a while. If the textures in Northern Journey look unusually high resolution to you, the reason for that is because they appear to have been directly scanned in by the developer himself. He took pictures of local Norwegian plant life and nature to use in the game, which gives the visuals a richly detailed look. I think this is one of the defining factors in why Northern Journey is such a unique looking game. You don't often see photo source textures making up the majority of the visuals in games like this, especially not indie projects. And it's clear that a not insignificant amount of effort went into making the greenery as lush and plentiful as possible without sacrificing performance. And on that note, the game runs like a dream. I can't remember ever experiencing even so much as a stutter. And believe me, just because this isn't a AAA game doesn't mean that good optimization is a given. So it's always nice to see that prioritized so highly. Reaching the peak of the mountain, we discover a shortcut back into Greenslet, again, and ride down a ropeway all the way across this beautiful place and back into Deadwell. Remember that boulder we couldn't lift from earlier? Well, a strength potion would be mighty handy right about now. Okay, that went right through my head, which once again begs the nagging question of whether or not I exist as a disembodied pair of floating arms in this game, but I digress. Yeah, that sure looks like the priest, or what's left of him at least. Turns out a dark being exited one of the dimensional violators and assumed the place of the village priest as a doppelganger. This poor sap is naught but a husk at this point, so says the message raven at least. I'm not sure if that means he's a zombie now or what, but he's clearly either lost his mind or doesn't have a mind left to lose, so of course it falls to us to put the husk down. Which wouldn't be so bad were it not for these stupid freaking gravestones all over the... Alright, what do you have to say for yourself, foul demon? What are you saying? Me, was trapped under the church, mad, trying to kill you? No, you must obviously have been having a mad hallucination. Honestly, I wouldn't even discount that as a possibility at this point. It's not like I have evidence anyway. The original dude melted into the ground. Well, I can't seem to confront this obvious demon any more than I already have, so I'll have to settle for the eye up in the bell tower. One of the two I need to open the path to Sourwood. The flute player has sent his messenger wolf to let us know about a note sheet that's been dropped into Knock Pond in a bottle. We need to get it back somehow, so maybe we'll get some kind of fishing minigame or... Wait. You should find someone at Deadwell with technical skills who could fix that old diving sphere by the catapult? Yeah, I think I know a guy who could do that, but we're not really... Enter bathysphere? Good luck, idiot. Oh my...
I chose the impossible. I chose rapture.
Yes, there is an underwater section in this game, and it is very strange to control, I'll tell you. It almost feels more like moon gravity, because you can somehow walk around normally and even jump, but that's about it. Obviously, you can't fire your weapons from inside a bathysphere, so your only option for self-defense is flashing a bright light at whatever else is down here. Knock Pond used to be a forest before some unexplained event caused the whole area to fall into a sinkhole and become completely submerged in water. This is pretty unsettling, to be honest, and... Oh yeah, the Knockin' is still here. For all intents and purposes, this is a flat-out horror section. Having to stave off the attacks of the Knockin', plunging deeper and deeper into a watery abyss, and then... The porthole on the bathysphere cracks as the water pressure increases. You start seeing these emaciated corpses and skeletons strung up in webs. And right when it looks like you might just be joining the locals at the bottom of this place, there's the bottle, there's the note sheet, and you're prompted to fill your floating bag with air, which sends you back up to the surface as you watch the glowing yellow eyes of the Knockin' fade into the darkness below. Damn, what a section. Every time you think you've seen everything Northern Journey has to offer, it throws something completely new at you and just goes to town. If variety is the spice of life, then I need to find a way to compress this game's essence into a pepper grinder. That was a bizarre analogy. What I'm trying to say is that there must have been a monumental effort here to keep the gameplay loop from getting too repetitive, and I think that's something to appreciate. But back to the issue at hand, what good is a note sheet with no one to play it? Luckily, I know some guys. Pretty desperate for a gig, if I remember correctly. The demon imposter guy wanted to get rid of this for a reason, and with the help of the local underground folk metal scene, we're going to find out just what that reason was. What a strange note sheet. The melody looks all wrong. There was supposedly a secret melody stored in the church at Deadwell. It was rumored to tear away disguises. You want us to play it? Why not? We could collect some money for a little performance. Meet us tonight, then. I still don't have any money, but don't tell them that. Wow, what a turnout. Everyone showed up. Literally, the entire town showed up. It wasn't that big a place to begin with, and I kind of already killed a few of its inhabitants, so... What the fuck? Oh, something doesn't feel right. Hey, Doc. I'm glad you're here. I wanted to talk to you. Some of those potions you gave me earlier tasted kind of funny. Man, my head. What a weird nightmare that was. Oh, I guess I got the second eye for this statue. Don't really remember how, or how I got here for that matter. Nope, still dreaming. Well, that was something. At least now we can visit the horrible witch swamp of Sourwood, one of my favorite locations in the game, if only for the aesthetic. Right off the bat, the name for this place is wonderfully appropriate. You can almost feel the stale, oppressive winds blowing past, and just as easily smell the nauseating stench of rot the air carries with it. The very rock is slowly decaying here, and the inhabitants are sure to give us just as cold a reception. Guard your blood, for the forest is infested with things wanting to drink it. He ain't kidding. Sourwood houses some of the most devious ambushes in the game, mostly coming from these horrible giant tick enemies. These bastards are everywhere. They're even in the trees. It doesn't matter how hard you look, you will not find all of these things before they jump you, and you do not want them to jump you. They latch on and drain a bunch of your health before letting go and scuttling away, bloated full to bursting with your own blood. And the best part? When you kill one that's in that state, it launches out a new tick for you to fight. Absolutely miserable, though I will admit that is a pretty impressively detailed enemy design. Unfortunately, after that, it's back to the Serious Sam bullshit with this enormous horde of spiders? They look more like daddy longlegs to me, but knowing this game, I'm gonna assume they're spiders. We do get a nice reward this time around, though. A burning bag of stones, allowing us to superheat the ammo for the sling, increasing its damage by 50%. Not bad, since I'm still using the sling pretty frequently even now. Lest we forget, though, this place is the home of witches, namely that snake lady from earlier. And when we make our presence known, she drops off some eggs that hatch into mini baby snake ladies. And defeating those, we get to listen to this very satisfying sound of rocks falling. I'm not sure where the sound effects in this game originated, but I suspect most or all of them may have been recorded by the dev himself. Many have the distinct vibe of homemade Foley, only they tend to be much nicer to listen to than you'd think from that description. There's an almost ASMR-like quality to much of the audio here, the sound of wood creaking, water flowing, stones grinding, and of course the clicks and clacks of your weaponry and tools. All that in combination with the consistently excellent music makes for a wonderfully enjoyable soundscape through the entire runtime of the game. I will never stop being impressed by indie devs, man. This project sounds so much better than most AAA games with entire teams of professional musicians and audio designers. Anyway, our goal for this area is to find 3 torment screws, while being stalked by some of the most hideous witches you'll ever have the misfortune of laying your eyes on. They don't even attack you, they just kind of show up to remind you they're always watching, I guess. Watch my water bomb? You can't make this stuff up, man. One thing I like about Sourwood is how rickety the whole place feels, for lack of a better word. You're walking around on these plank bridges and riding makeshift elevator contraptions made of moldering ropes and old rotted wood. The whole thing feels like it could break apart at any second, and it adds a lot to the hostile environment. Once we find all the torment screws, we can use them to destroy this statue. At least, I think it's a statue. The fact that it moves is a little disconcerting. I feel slightly bad about that, but it was probably evil, right? Actually, come to think of it, what is this thing even doing here? Who built it and why? In another game, that could be a complaint, but here I'm genuinely just curious. The boss of Sourwood is somewhat of a gimmick fight. You get this weapon here, the Sacrificial Staff, that you can only use in this one encounter. It consumes lamb heads of all things as ammo, and is effectively a railgun. Shame you can't use it anywhere else, because I definitely wouldn't mind having something like this in the final stretch of the game, but regardless. Remember those plank bridges I was just talking about? Well, those comprise basically the entire area, as the Snake Lady returns one final time, soaring around on her broom while you tiptoe across a series of balance beams. It's not the most fun thing in the world, but at least there's no risk of running out of ammo. Ugh. Okay, that one was pretty unpleasant to listen to. The way forward is through this underground river, but luckily, Delic Denarg is willing to take us across.
I'll take you to a place which might be interesting for you.
You know, I was just gonna edit that in there for the joke, but that voice actually fits pretty well, doesn't it?
You cannot stop Ratam Denarg opening a door to the realm of Mare.
I'm not sure what that means, Delic Denarg, but thank you for the advice, /threat, /information, /theory, /observation, etc., etc. So here we are in Darkthroat. Yet another memorable and atmospheric level that features this incredible set piece of a giant whirlpool. And I mean giant, look at this thing. I see it and my first thought is I want to jump into that. Seen the Maelstrom? And I know what you then thought. I want to jump into that. Damn, flute player, you didn't tell me you were psychic too. Beneath the Maelstrom there is something you need to defeat Ratam Denarg. But wait, my eager employee, you will need an air supply to survive. I think the word employee would kind of imply that I'm getting paid for all this, but I haven't seen a cent for my efforts so far. Maybe I'm getting paid in the thrill of adventure, and the real treasure was the friends we made along the way. Fucking hope not, though. Grab a mouthpiece and an air supply, and we're good to go. Who knew all you need to survive diving into a raging maelstrom is a jerry-rigged inhaler? So what we're really doing down here is fashioning a weapon that can defeat the dreaded Ratam Denarg. Yes, we're making a weapon this time. I think it's really cool the way these two different witch boss fights each require a unique weapon to kill them. And going out of the way to create one yourself is a great way of adding to the experience of fighting something with supernatural abilities. You actually have to prepare rather than just sprinting in with a battle cry and a hail of arrows as usual. To make this weapon, you need the bone of a dead man and the stem of a birch tree. You combine them together and lower them down an afterlife well. Doing so attracts a two-headed snake to coil around the contraption, which now acts as your only means to damage the boss. This functions as a leeching weapon. Hitting an enemy with it will damage them and heal you in return. But if you miss, the snake bites your hand instead and you take damage. The actual fight itself goes about as you'd expect, but again, the build-up turns this into a pretty memorable encounter. How's that for a water bomb, Denarg? Come to find out, the vile witch was guarding the entrance to a place called the Mare Bog. A sense of foreboding hangs heavy in the air. You can tell something bad is about to happen. But what? The flute player has sent his message raven to bring us a protective talisman, a stone with runes engraved upon it. Entering this cabin, we find a lone bed with our only option to crawl inside and take a nap. Oh shit, what do they say to do in this situation? Don't open your eyes, right? Well, too late for that. And thus kicks off one of the more intense sections of the game, taking a jog through the pitch black fog of the Mare Bog, jumping over logs while being pursued by this dog. It's actually pretty scary, and a good use of the sort of situational horror that Northern Journey loves to employ. And at the risk of repeating myself, I gotta point out the variety again. Even this late in the runtime, we're still getting completely unique encounters and gameplay mechanics. The chase is capped off by finding a dimensional violator and using the runestone to knock the shadow thing inside before closing the gate and leaving it stranded in the void. In theory. I mean, it's not like I know how these things work. Hope I at least didn't send that thing somewhere populated. Anyway, with the first violator finally in our possession, we can leave this curse-ridden place behind and move on to some fresher air, and one of the nicer looking areas in the game. Sourwood again! Nah, I'm kidding. I'm just here to get a totally pointless shortcut. Alright, here we are, the Granite Gash. Breathtaking scale, gorgeous music, bees with stingers the size of kitchen knives, nondescript mucus beings, you know, all the highlights you've come to expect. As much as I like this place, there isn't a great deal to talk about here that I haven't brought up previously. It's got some nice level design, and I really like these water striders, they're cool. But it's kind of just, you know, more Northern Journey. For the first part. Because here's the thing. The last 2/3 or so of the Granite Gash, while being just as atmospheric as ever, is unfortunately also where Northern Journey's problems with tedium and combat start to get a little out of hand. And it all starts with this spider boss fight. Of course there's a spider boss fight, right? Only it's actually 3 spider bosses. At once. And one of them is carrying around a bunch of smaller spiders on its back that periodically jump off and add to the absolute anarchy that unfolds the instant you're dropped out of this cage. Again, visually, this is great. All these weird green webs and drained corpses hanging from the ceiling. It's all really good stuff in that department. But the fight itself is just... ugh. The spiders bobbing up and down does make it look like they're dancing though, so that improves my mood by quite a bit. But then, without a minute to breathe, you're immediately thrust into a huge gauntlet of trolls firing catapults at you from the most inconvenient locations known to man, as you slowly inch forward, taking them out one by one with the bear crossbow, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. And then to cap all of that off, some psycho fused trolls and spiders to create these abominations against nature that spawn even more spiders from their spider hands, and you know what that means? More Serious Sam! Good lord, man. I think it's worth pointing out that even these sections I don't think are bad exactly. They're not broken or poorly designed. I just find it to all be so antithetical to the magical moments that make this game so good. But hey, at least we're done with spiders anyway. So says the flute player at least. See, it says right here. I promise this is the last living and air-breathing spiders you may meet in this world. Which is great to hear, really, as we head into the icy peaks with... you guessed it, yet another interlude featuring a unique traversal mechanic that only appears once in the entire game, and this one is sorely needed at that. Yeah, that's right, it's a freaking hang glider. There's a hang glider segment. If you're still not convinced that Northern Journey has an absurd amount of variety, then I don't know what to tell you at this point. It controls really well, too. In essence, it's just like flying around in the Batman Arkham games. Dive to increase your speed, pull up to get more height, repeat until your destination is reached. Great little palate cleanser. And the way forward being this twisting, impossibly long bridge stretching out into the distance is awesome. One of my favorite visuals in the game. Next stop, the Haunted Glacier. We're off the map now, fellas, off the beaten path. We can't rely on anything but our own wits and courage. No one's coming to help. Here be dragons! Oh hey, it's the flute player. You know, I'm really not sure why he needs me to be doing all this if he always shows up to these places long before I do. I'm starting to feel like this dude might not be on the level, you guys. There's another dimensional violator somewhere in this place being guarded by the doppelganger from earlier. Guess I should have put that guy down when I had the chance. This level consists primarily of suffering, trying to fight these spirits with restricted movement due to the level design, and mimicking the songs played by these statues. Turns out being a traveling flute player isn't as easy as I thought, but don't tell him that. Come on. Ugh. Stop laughing, it's harder than it looks. Oh yeah, and let's not forget these shadow spirits that you can't damage with any weapons. They can sure damage you though. And what's that? You want some insta-kill environmental hazards with that serving of unkillable enemies and serious Sam gameplay? Oh, that's fine, that's great actually, I wanted that. That's exactly what I wanted, actually. Credit where it's due though, at least this place doesn't have ice physics. I can scarcely even imagine how unbearably agonizing this would be if you were sliding off the ledges on top of everything else. Oh, what the skeleton spiders? Really? I thought there weren't gonna be... Oh, wait. No more living spiders. Yeah, that's adorable. That's real cute. Oh, come on! Well, to be fair, this place does accurately simulate the experience of traversing a haunted glacier. You guys remember Greenslet? I remember Greenslet. That was a fun time. Those days are long past us now, though. Will you look at what is happening in this boss fight? And yes, those paths of water do also instantly kill you if you touch them, in case you were wondering. Finally! Okay, that's 2. Just 1 more to go. And even better, we can take this awesome ice slide back down to the entrance, where the flute player has opened up a portal all the way back to Deadwell. Surprise! Turns out he was the one who made the violators in the first place. Kinda figured, to be honest. Man, the lush colors really pop after being stuck in the frozen north for so long. The village idiot has made off with the last violator and opened a portal to the same place that he got that pet worm from, and the only way to follow him is through the underwater caves beneath Deadwell called the Drowned Veins. Also, I think this is the only time in the game we hear the player character's voice. I wonder if that band from earlier is looking for a vocalist. The Drowned Veins are probably my least favorite area in the game. It is a massive, labyrinthine hellhole. And you know, maybe labyrinthine is the wrong word here. It's actually quite linear, but everything looks the same, so it becomes annoyingly easy to get turned around and head the wrong way. Even these guiding threads don't help a great deal, since if you do get turned around, you'll just follow the thread in the wrong direction. There's this one section in Soma, if you guys have ever played that game, where you have to follow a trail of blue lights to your objective. But if you get lost, you'll see that the lights are two-sided, with the color on the back being red. So if you start going the wrong way, you'll know, because you're following the wrong color of light. I think this level could have used something similar to keep the player going in the right direction, especially since you are encouraged to break away from the path to get secret health bonuses and such. You do get a harpoon launcher, and that's pretty cool. Wait, more spiders? And these ones are definitely alive, so... Oh. No more living or air-breathing spiders. Hilarious. You know, I have half a mind to use one of these dimensional violators at telefrag this smartass. Whatever. I made it, and I have enough max HP to get this insanely powerful ballista weapon, so I'm happy again. It's just hitting me now that this is probably the little helper the game mentioned way back in the beginning. I always imagined some little imp following you around or something, but honestly, this is preferable. Alright, down we go. So here we are in the fires of Mount Doom for the final boss, and man, let me tell you right now, you are not ready for this. Because what we have here is a multi-phase boss with not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4, but 5 phases. Not all in a row, thankfully. You get a break between each, but damn, dude. 5? See, here's the first one. The pet worm has grown to an alarming size, and the village idiot is riding it around trying to kill you. So you empty the first health bar and the pair escape through a wall and lava. Then you have to chase them down and fight through a mob of demons. And when you finally catch up, the pet worm has grown itself some spider legs and you start phase 2. And now it's constantly spawning ads in the form of these lava spiders. Empty that health bar too and they escape again. Follow them through yet another demon-infested hellscape and confront them again on this hilariously narrow series of platforms, only to find out that not only has the worm grown wings, but its rider has tied blades to the ends of its legs. Thus kicks off Phase 3, trying not to fall off the most precarious arena in the history of video games, while being dive-bombed by a Nidhogg who wants to use my face as practice for what it's eventually going to do to the roots of Yggdrasil. There, I killed it. Worm and rider tumble miles down into the rock and magma below. You'd think that would be enough. You would think that would be enough. But no, they survived that. They both survived that. So here's Phase 4, where we have to stop the village idiot from stealing the last dimensional violator so the locals can perform some kind of musical ritual on it to make it explode. But you can't just shoot the village idiot, so he keeps carrying this thing off and you have to bring it back. Which wouldn't be so bad were it not for the army of endlessly respawning wood creatures. And then the 5th phase starts. We scale a tower and get the biggest crossbow I've ever seen for our efforts, but here comes the Nidhogg again. It's fully grown, it's breathing fire, and finally, after like 30 minutes of this, the final shot is landed and the bastard goes down. For real this time. Man, that's like right above me actually, and it's getting closer. Oh no. We awaken in our boat in the same place we started, with the holes repaired, it seems, and the message raven has brought us one final note. I am sorry to say, our village idiot survived just fine, as your head became his airbag. His dear pet worm was crushed and pierced into oblivion. Hopefully that quenches his reason to seek the remaining dimensional violators. You will not find the place of this adventure again, but behind you in a chest, there's a map showing the correct route for you. And I also put a valuable flute in there, a memory and reward, you might say. Should I need you again, I will surely sink your boat when you least expect it. Signed, the Traveling Flute Player. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Northern Journey. One of the finest and most unique indie games out there. I should say, even the more tedious or frustrating parts of this game really don't diminish my enjoyment of it. This is, without a doubt, a work created out of absolute passion. The fact that only one guy made this is absurd. The dedication is commendable, to say the least. And I'm happy to report that the game has grown a substantial fan base in the time since its release. Still not as much as it deserves, if you ask me, but it's good to know that something so niche found its audience. If you haven't played Northern Journey, but still watched this whole video for whatever reason, I don't think it should come as any surprise that I highly recommend playing it for yourself. I did brush over and leave out a few things in this video so that people can have some surprises if they're convinced to give the game a try after watching. It is 100% worth the money, only being a paltry $12 on Steam, and isn't all that long of a game either. Plus it's got a small download size and runs great on basically anything, so please do give it a try if you're interested. I would love to see this game get more attention, as it is still rather obscure in the grand scheme of things. As for whether or not we'll see anything else from the developer, well, he used to post devlogs of a new similarly styled game to his YouTube channel, Slid Studio, but there hasn't been any news in almost 4 years, so I don't know what ended up happening with that project. Maybe it was cancelled, maybe he just decided to withdraw from the public eye to work in seclusion. I wish I could tell you more, but all I can say for sure is that the game looks amazing. And if this ever ends up being a finished product, it would be a day one sale from me. If nothing else, we at least have a Northern Journey. So, thank you to Slid Studio for releasing this incredible, inspiring game for us to play. And thank you for watching this video. My name is WolfMP2, and I'll see you next time.